Communications Minister Solly Malatsi is appearing before the Oversight Committee on recently gazetted policy directions that appear, some people say, to be in contravention of the Electronic Communications Act. The minister speaking there. Let's listen in.
Disadvantaged individuals. But what it must do is to also permit the commitments that are envisaged and articulated for in the ICT sector codes around valid conditions for applications for individual licenses. This meaning the equity equivalence program. So where are we now in terms of the process that I've outlined? Post the Gazette, we have a 30-day period in which all stakeholders, and by the volume of the contributions on this subject, it is very clear that there are multiple stakeholders who've got very interesting views on this, that they'll be able to make their submissions through that period. What is incumbent upon the ministry and the department is, in consideration of those inputs from the public, they must inform the final formulation of the policy direction, which will then be shared with the regulator as it is required. And in closing, Chair, I want to underpin this point, which is important and has been diluted in some of the conversation around. I am pretty clear that transformation is sacrosanct in our country, that it's a non-negotiable in order for the country to achieve its aspirations, but most importantly, to live to the provisions of the BBEE Act as it was articulated and envisaged. So we are not attempting to open a special dispensation for Starlink or any other company or an individual. We are saying that the regulations in our sector must consistently make provision for the two choices that exist in any other sector and other aspects of the ICT when it comes to the role of multinationals, whether small or big, that the provisions around the option of a 30% local ownership or the pathway of equity equivalence must be consistently available, or at least for the authority to consider the consistency of that, of that option. So the ultimate intention is to ensure that the regulation is aligned with national empowerment regulations for licensing and potential new entrants. And lastly, Chair, which I think will then sum up before we get into the conversation, is the sentiment around the role of the regulator vis-a-vis ministerial roles. It is very clear in terms of the process that ICASA can at any given time amend its ownership regulations at its so fits. What we are seeking and raising the flag for is that in doing so, that must be in tandem with the ICT sector codes and that it be applied consistently. And to go back to what you said, Chair, which is a very valid point around timing. Colleagues, different people are always going to have different views about the timing. And I would really like that in that conversation, we are mindful of the steps that predate the visit that took place to Washington, to be mindful that the work that culminated, even engaging with ICASA as early as the 4th of October, would not have been done that way if all of a sudden there is a realization that we have to gazette by Friday. We did say, even at the time, in many of the public engagements that we had, that the intention in terms of our own timelines would be to aim towards a finalization of the policy direction towards mid-2025. And we are now as close to mid-25 as humanly possible. We would not have predicted that the events, there would be a visit last week, but I make that point to showcase that there is no conspiracy on our part with regards to this policy direction. There is no underhanded effort in darkness to railroad this into the South African public. We have at all times communicated of the process publicly, and we are comfortable that the stage that we are in now is a legitimate stage which opens the process for the public and all stakeholders to make submissions on their views, and we will consider those views. We have to consider those views because we can't preempt the final determination of how those public comments will be. And there's been some sentiments, Chair, that why not proceed or pursue the avenue of an amendment to the ECA, which has been the observation of, some commentators. There are multiple avenues that are available to consider which instruments would be timeous, which instrument would be effective in addressing the question that we are seeking the regulator to ask. And we felt that on the consideration of all those options, the policy directive is still the effective intervention to do that. In the end, in the final consideration of all the comments that are being made, it may well be that there is a need to explore the amendment of the ECA.
All right, we're just going to interrupt that. Apologies, Soli Malatsi appearing before Parliament, the Communications Minister in Soli Malatsi, currently appearing before the Oversight Committee about these recently gazetted policy directions. There seems to be a question and answer session now taking place in that parliamentary sitting. Let's continue listening in.
Would be, or it could be that no, there is no further need for additional licenses. It wouldn't necessarily promote competition or any other objects. We have sufficient number of licenses in the market, and therefore no further action is required. The downfall of that is, and that's why we refer to a trading of licenses happened. So, as I said, on the one hand, you have the 490 licenses. On the other hand, if I'm new today and I want to apply for a new IECNS license, I'm not able to do that, because I have to wait for the minister's policy direction. In the absence of that, for me to enter the market, the only way is I must go and negotiate with one of the existing 500 licensees, and I must try to procure such license. And that's the trade we're talking about. So out there, people pay a lot of money to then buy such licenses in the market, and then ICASA's role is then to consider a license transfer. So that's then, they just deal with license transfers, publish it for comment, see what the implications are, and do license transfer. So that's the dilemma we have, and these recommendations from ICASA will then give us evidence of what would be best from a policy and ultimately in the interest of society. Chair, and yes, we've managed to publish it last week. It is one of our APP targets of the department, and publishing it was part of the Q1 performance required, and that's why it was important to get it in the public domain. And currently it's therefore open for 30 calendar days, 30 working days. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Woods. Let me just check, is that it from yourselves, Minister?
Yes, Chairperson.
Thank you very much. I don't want to cast aspersions on the process, because you yourself have also said that there is obviously a lot of public interest in this. But on this issue of the relationship between the two policy directives, I do want to just push you so that we all move from the same understanding. Am I correct to make the assumption that the license process, so for any new provider to be able to operate in the space, the license process needs to be closed? Needs to be opened. And the only way it can be opened is by you issuing a policy directive that it must be closed, and the policy directive of the 21st of May is the start of that process. That if the public comments come back and say, yes, you must open, then you can open and you can get new players in the sector. And then secondly, where then now the licenses are open, people can apply, then the policy directive of the 23rd of May then says, even for new licenses, then you may need to you may do away with the 30%. Is that a correct understanding? Would they flow like that in the event the comments came back and said, yes, open licenses, yes, remove the 30% and align with BE like you were saying? Thanks.
Chair, I think it would be difficult to start preempting what the probable permutations would be, because for any convenience, one may take any line that may suit, their peer view. But what Alf is advocating is that the dilemma right now is that if a new entrant, and Alf, please clarify this with regard to individual licenses, right? Right, with regards to the individual licenses, that is where the problem is right now, because in circulation already, you've got 490 licenses that are in the space. And the study and the report that was done by the Competition Commission, amongst other things, the cost to communicate, was looking at, is there sufficient competition in the space? And the dilemma that we're having is that for any prospective new entrant for an individual license, the only way they can enter the space is to enter into, a negotiation with a current license holder for a transfer of that license, rather than an entirely new process of their own to get a license. And the Policy Directive then seeks to open that up so that it is done. And that's why we don't have a firm view as to whether the opening of that would ensure or achieve the objectives of that study by the Competition Commission around market competition leading to, affordable cost to communicate.
Thank you. Mr. Oates, do you have any additions?
Thank you, Honourable Chair. So that really shows that there is an indirect correlation, but at the same time, if ICASA, for example, through their inquiry, find that we don't need such further licenses, then that would be the end of it, in all likelihood. So if there was a direct correlation and one needs the other, we would have rather just told ICASA, open up, you must now issue and allow further licenses. We haven't done that. We've stepped back and we allowed the authority to do an inquiry on it. So if, for example, they do come back and they do say they still recommend, then yes, then such policy direction will eventually be issued, I guess, depending again now on the public consultation. But then, for us it'll take a month and a half. Then ICASA would have another 6 months at least. So that takes quite a long time. And if eventually ICASA, we issue the final policy direction on the matter, that'll probably take another period of time. So that could add a year to this process, which typically also shows that the correlation is more indirect than direct. In fact, today, if you're a new company and you want to enter the market quickly, you'll probably be better off just going and procuring a license. Your time to market would be much quicker than waiting for a possibility that this opening takes place on the other side in due course. But we want to emphasize, yes, coincidentally now there is this indirect correlation, but our process has started long ago, and we can probably retrieve ICASA correspondence of many years ago where they've pleaded that we do this opening because it causes unnecessary administration on their side, merely doing license transfers, which simply doesn't make sense. And the fact is, managed liberalization is history. It's been overtaken by events, and we needed to act on it at some point or later. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Oates and the Minister. Honourable members, I was still about to speak. I was going to say, I have received obviously a lot of correspondence from a number of political parties. I know Honourable Makhubela would receive correspondence from parties not represented in this portfolio committee, I think including Build One South Africa and from the public. So I do want to open an opportunity for engagement on this. But Minister, also that correspondence we will be passing to you where you may not have received some of it. Because I think it's important just so that you also get an appreciation of the issues. So I'm going to take hands. Let me start with Honourable Matafa, Honourable Subrathi, Honourable Tambo, Honourable Chawuke, Honourable Shongo, Honourable Makhubela, Honorable Bodlani and Honorable Sithole, in that order, please.
Thank you, Chair. Let me take this opportunity to appreciate the opening remarks by the Minister and the presentation that is made. Chair, sitting here as lawmakers, we are brought by voters who elect the parties that we represent based on hopes that our manifesto commitments present to them. Now, looking at the policy directives as presented by the Minister and the Department for Public Participation, I think that they sort of dilute or undermine those particular hopes. Because I can just pose a simple question. Why not open the licensing applications without including equity equivalent? Because, Chair, I'm raising this on the basis that the World Bank declares South Africa as the most unequal society in the whole world. The GNU Statement of Intent agrees with that. And one of the key focus areas is to ensure social justice and equity. So I'm a bit worried that a minister from a GNU party with that kind of a commitment in the statement of intent will bring, in my view, and in the view of the party that I represent, a policy directive that undermines that particular statement of the GNU. Chair, it is not only the World Bank. Let's come to the sector. In the report by ICASA State of ICT Sector Report of 2025, that report calls for a deeper transformation, particularly in ownership and management control by Black people. So I'm interested to find out from the Minister, if before he kickstarted the process, did he solicit a view from ICASA? That are this directive legislatively and constitutionally sound? Because it is not only the report by ICASA, the constitution of the country also calls for equality and redress. And the BEE Act sought to achieve that particular equality and redress. Chair, it's also the BEE Commission itself that laments the lack of transformation of the ICT sector. The sector features in the top 5 of the less transformed sectors in the country, amongst agriculture, property, and financial services. Would we be correct to say that this policy directive is not correct to be proposed under the current circumstances that the transformation agenda of the GNU that we represent and the African National Congress Party that I represent in this committee? Chair, I want to test something very quickly. I missed the name of the gentleman behind the acting DG. He cites the Altec court judgment. I'm just interested to find out, where does equity equivalent come in? Because our understanding of the judgment, it focused mainly on ICASA's role in the correct applications of Section 32, 92, and 93, in terms of allowing the license holders then to convert their licenses. Nowhere does it cite a directive by the minister to be issued. Therefore, in our view, Chair, this appears to us as a policy matter. It appears as just the minister giving ICASA authority to say, open up licenses, but don't tamper with the transformation agenda that this country has agreed to in terms of taking it forward. I'm sorry, Chair, I'm just going quickly through my notes. Now, I'm sort of concerned, Chair, with the minister's remark that when he states that ICASA as a regulator cannot stop the minister from proceeding with policy directive. That is a loaded statement. In my view, even if ICASA is not comfortable with what the minister is trying to achieve, it means that he will simply ignore their recommendation. And that is concerning because one of the mandates of ICASA is to assist this government and this country to achieve constitutional values. And amongst them is the equality as well as social justice that I have mentioned, as were created by the unjust laws of the past. Chair, I will pause there, but safely to state that we request all parties and members who are of society who are interested in this matter to reject this particular policy directive. It goes against the values of what this society or what this government seeks to achieve. And I and the party that I sit in, I don't think we will support it. Thank you, Chair.
Tafa, Honorable Subrathi.
Thank you, Chairperson. And Chairperson, let me start by saying that this matter has indeed gained a great amount of attention of South Africans and I think internationally. Largely because, Chairperson, this concerns the wealth of the land of South Africans. The Freedom Charter says very clearly that the people shall own the wealth of this land. An alternative equivalent to ownership speaks exactly against that principle, as Honorable Matafa has mentioned in our statement of intent, to which the Honorable Minister and his party are signatories to, that one of the goals is to promote social justice and equity in our land. And I think that is the cutting edge, that is the sore point. And we must not be naive to lose that point. As in my short stint as acting chair, I was challenged, the democracy of this country was challenged, and I stood by it. I will not be naive in this house to say that we cannot talk about this. So as a caucus of the ANC caucus in this portfolio committee, we were asked, and I whipped the ANC study group. I was asked for a public statement. I did not. We waited until yesterday, until the leadership of the African National Congress had met, and I got a briefing. I wanted to know very clearly, was any deal cut in America by the leadership? And I've got a clear-cut clarity from the African National Congress that there was no deal cut clearing the path for any Starlink regulations, as the public is calling it. So very, very clear, the African National Congress is clear. Our laws are sacrosanct. There is no backdoor to gaining entry. Anyone wanting to gain entry into this country, especially into the ICT sector, which is a sector that is most disadvantaged, as Honorable Matafa said, perhaps the most, must come to the front door. There is a 30% that is in place. So I would really, I'd like to ask the Honorable Minister, because we must not be naive to avoid the politics. The party that he represents, that is the Democratic Alliance, have they had any conversations with Elon Musk and Starlink, that whilst the minister has gone on pains to indicate that this is not, this is coincidental? I think South Africans need a very clear answer. Kati, that has your party posturing this now manje to solicit and to create the avenue for Starlink to come in? Certainly the African National Congress position remains, as Honorable Matav has indicated. We will not support this policy directive. We will call for its withdrawal. Chairperson, having clearly identified our party position and requesting the Honorable Minister to make known his party positioning, and that there's been no back chat rooms taking place in America last week, I'd really like to ask, the EEIP that the minister is proposing, how does that, what is the history of the EIPs that have been in place thus far? And how have they benefited the people of our country tangibly, especially in terms of transformative agenda? Chairperson, another area that I wish to raise with the Honorable Chairperson is that he is considering that Section 9(2)(b) of the ECA clearly mandates a 30% HDG ownership for licensing. What is the legal justification for your policy, Mr. Minister, for your policy directive that aims to bypass this requirement that equivalent programs which fall under a separate legislative framework? Are you not essentially trying to reshape the laws through unilateral action, thereby diminishing the authority of Parliament? Following on to that, what rationale underlies your decision to exempt the ICT sector specifically, whilst other industries such as mining and finance have consistently complied and continue to comply with the 30% HDG ownership requirement? Lastly, Chairperson, as the African National Congress, we continuously emphasize that ownership is a crucial pillar of economic transformation in our country. And how does allowing an organization such as Starlink, and I will bring Starlink and place it at the center of this house, to bypass equity participation align with the national policies aimed at promoting significant black ownership in the economy, particularly, Chairperson, in a critical sector such as telecommunications that has historically marginalized, disadvantaged South Africans? Chairperson, as I pause, may I also express my concern, as I've expressed previously, that the Honorable Minister has consistently surprised South Africans and this committee, such as the withdrawal of the SABC bill. We heard of it in media. Such as the intended CETA regulations, again, we hear of it in the media. Chairperson, I wish to record my concern that we would really like to be taken into confidence by the Minister so that this portfolio committee and the Minister can work collaboratively to benefit our countries rather than using the media as a means through which this portfolio committee is communicated to. Thank you so much, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honorable Subrathi. Honorable Tambo.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and to the Minister and to the Department for the presentation and for the spirited contributions from Honorable Subrathi and other members of the committee. My concern is that it seems like the Minister is trying to amend legislation using a ministerial policy directive. And I'll tell you why. Because you use the word alignment, and I think you do it deliberately instead of amendment. So I think you're trying to effect amendments using a ministerial policy directive to the Electronic Communications Act as well as to the ICT Sector Code, which is a product of the BBBE Act. Because in your policy directive communication, you say that you seek to align the two. I'm interested as to what would the consequence of that alignment look like? How do you achieve alignment outside of changing legislation? Because the ICT Sector Code, as much as it might be a regulatory instrument under the Department of Communications, it's a product of the BBBE Act. And to give a ministerial directive on the ICT Sector Code, which belongs to that specific act, which is regulated by the Department of Trade and Industry, confuses me. On the Electronic Communications Act, which speaks to the 30% ownership as well, I would imagine that an amendment of that or an alignment of that with the ICT Sector Code would require some level of amendment to either both pieces of legislation or one. One doesn't belong to the Department of Communications. It's a product of an act of the Department of Trade and Industry. The other is an act of Parliament. When you want to achieve this alignment, how do you seek to achieve it using a ministerial policy directive? And I think that speaks to the overstepping of powers or overstepping of executive powers that has been spoken to in the House. That is my primary legislative concern. But also conversely, I mean, we're talking about Starlink here. I don't think we should tiptoe around it. We're talking about Starlink. There might be many other foreign satellite companies that have interest in operating in South Africa, but there's a specific interest in Starlink, and I think Siklo will speak to the political context about that as well. But I'm interested in, has there any been consideration of the impact the introduction of foreign satellite companies operating in South Africa would have on the local telecommunications industry, specifically as it relates to jobs? Because there's a myth going around here that the introduction of Starlink will achieve two things, that it will achieve rural access to internet connectivity and as well will increase jobs. How will a satellite that will operate and be ran remotely from another country impact on the local telecommunications sector's jobs? And considering especially the high unemployment rate in this country. But secondly, what is the knowledge of the department on the costs related to the introduction of foreign satellite operators? Will it necessarily bring higher connectivity levels to rural communities? Will it be cheaper? Comparative to what? And has there been any consideration of the other spheres within which Starlink operates and the regulatory frameworks in the other countries that they operate, and whether they abided by them as set in stone? Because we are aware that they are operating in India with much stricter ownership, regulatory existence in terms of local ownership there. We know there's been a challenge in Taiwan, in Japan. Why are we altering our legislation for Starlink, whereas where it goes to operate in other countries, it did not utilize this coercion for us to change our laws in order for it to operate in South Africa? So I'm interested in the legislative aspect of it, and I think we'll talk further after we get clarity on that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Tambo. I think it was Honorable Chawuke after.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. If you don't mind, I will remain seated. Greetings to honorable members and also to the Minister and his delegation. Chairperson, I think I've been greatly covered by my fellow colleagues, but one would also want to find out, in terms of the position of the Honorable Minister in his policy directive or recommendation for gazetting, one would want to understand whether it has been taken into consideration not only through his political party, but as a minister, as an official in cabinet, the consequences that this will have on the ordinary South Africans, ultimately looking at whether it will provide an opportunity for SMMEs who are in the sector to have an opportunity to become service providers in this space. And additionally, it would be what type of consultation has taken place also with the Department of Innovation and Science. We do know that Innovation and Science has a particular program and project that they are running as well. And one would want to see if this was a unilateral decision that was taken, or was there consultation and consultation that is befitting and sufficient to really put a case study forward? Chairperson, also just taking into consideration, and I think this was said by Honorable Sobrathi, in terms of how the minister has conducted himself with the policies and perhaps how he seeks to amend transformative policies, one is quite concerned in terms of whether we are progressing or regressing. And perhaps through your guidance and your leadership, Chairperson, you will guide us in terms of the proximity or the reach of the minister and this portfolio committee in terms of those amendments and perhaps the recommendation. And I think it's quite important for us to re-emphasize that as a portfolio committee and as part of our oversight and our responsibility, we are finding out decisions that are made by the minister on social media and through media platforms. And one would want to have an appreciation that the minister is regularly invited to this platform and to this portfolio committee to take us into confidence on developments of the department. And I think this was said by Honorable Matafa, if I'm correct, to the question to say, or was it yourself, Chairperson, to say, did he sit and then make a decision? Or is this a political party directive and political line of march that is currently being displayed. And we must understand that, as indicated by my colleagues as well, we must take a very clear stance that we're not going to derail from a transformative agenda where we seek to improve the lives of the most vulnerable and create economic opportunities. And I think what is clearly displayed here is leaving an opportunity for international players to come through the back door without consequences, and therefore removing or creating a greater vacuum from those who are in the local market from actually competing. And I think this is what these recommendations that are brought forward by, and I'm going to call them recommendations by the minister, seek to achieve, and more especially favor business rather than look at the interest of South Africans and those who are previously disadvantaged from opportunities. And how do we ensure that these economic opportunities are really deeply rooted in providing or being distributed with the previously disadvantaged in our communities? The last part, Chairperson, I think one wants to find, or second to last would be, in terms of the travel that has been done, or that has taken place through the department, what are some of the findings that the minister can give as part of the case studies for us to really understand what type of, not conversations, but discussions are taking place through your international travels? Because this starts to raise some great concerns, and especially around Starlink, to say, are we having our GNU partners, GNU leaders and other political parties perhaps in the background utilizing their proximity to advance their own political agenda and create alliances internationally? And it must be cautioned, and I think perhaps it must be clearly stated. And then the last part, Chairperson, in terms of the department, it's not consequence, but its ability to measure the risk, its risk analysis. What are the risk analyses that have been conducted in terms of what has been pronounced by the minister? And does the department have the financial capacity to even take this legally? Chairperson, I'm going to leave it there. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chawuke. I didn't see Honorable Alicia's hand, so I don't want to leave you. Yeah. Honorable Alicia? Oh, you're saying no? Okay. Kumda Makileyo that she wants to come after Honorable Makubel. There's Honorable Makubel and Honorable Shong.
Yes, thank you so much, Chairperson. Appreciate this time. Thank you, Minister, for gracing us, and our greetings to all the officials and interested parties, my colleagues here. Minister, you are at pains to explain the inexplainable in our view. The clandestine unilateral approach that you took in providing this policy directive is for us very bizarre and very abnormal. This is supposed to be a transparent process according to Section 9 of our Constitution. The public should be aware of it, there should be engagement, and the institutions, at least that you preside over, should be aware of this process. Now, Minister, when you do a policy directive, you're supposed to do a detailed consultative stakeholder engagement. We have not seen that. We've mentioned that even in our letter to you. We're supposed to see your regulatory impact assessment that you would have conducted that would lead you to do this policy directive. We have not seen that. Now you are in a hurry to bring these multinational players, such that, Minister, you are even tripping all over yourself with your colleagues there to tell us about 490 license holders. These are historically disadvantaged groups that have ECNS and ECS license. You raise other questions besides those that we came with. Now you talk about competition, you want to create competition. You've got 490 historically disadvantaged license holders that all of them are sitting at home. You have given them licenses without support, without financial backing, without any technical backing. And now you are even saying to multinationals, you don't need to partner with these 490 historically disadvantaged groups. We are going to find a way to avoid you giving them 30% of triple BEE Act imperatives in terms of equity, ownership, management and control of the ICT sector. You are issuing this policy directive in the guise of creating competition. You are issuing this policy directive in a guise of trying to enable some sort of digital inclusion. You have it sitting right in front of you. The fact that there was a moratorium by ICASA under your department, Minister, to say we're not going to issue any further licenses, but we're going to support the current license holders, ensure that they partner with multinationals that come into the country, ensure that they can breathe, they get capital, they get supported. Have you consulted these 490 license holders in this policy directive? Have you heard from them? What are their limitations in terms of providing connectivity as their licenses are demanding them to? Now, it sounded as if you actually cared for these historically disadvantaged groups that are sitting with licenses that have become useless. But you issued these licenses, then you left them to the sharks, you threw them to the sharks. We only have two dominant players in the telecoms industry in this nation, MTN and Vodacom. And these poor license holders must now contend to be some last mile connector somewhere if by luck they manage to get any project that comes their way. You have not told us any of the support that you're offering to these license holders. I think your reason of competition is really flimsy, it's frivolous. It should not even have been raised in this platform. What you should be doing is to ensure that these 490 are empowered enough to be able to create competition for the two dominant, so that we get our data costs low and we're able to give coverage to the underserviced rural and remote areas. Now, Minister, that was in response to what you spoke about. The Digital Communications and the Communications and Digital Technologies Department has been mandated to enable South Africa's digital transformation. To date, we can tell you that you have achieved no digital inclusion. You have not created any economic growth for the country or enabled the government to create any further employment or economic growth. You have not achieved universal access or any objectives that are spelled out in the ICT white paper. We ask ourselves sitting here, then what is the point of this department? With billions of rands that have already been funneled into your entities, we anticipated an ICT revolution in your operations. If not for the disastrous Oval meeting in the White House, which descended into a televised spectacle in which South Africa was subjected to a global ridicule as a barbarian, violent nation, pressured into abandoning its sovereign laws to appease the billionaires and multinationals like Starlink, with an investment pitch that turned into a violent crime scene of us slitting each other's throats, raping our women over and over again. If not for that scenery, where your department, Minister, became a center stage, that you have failed to provide technology that will cover our borders, that will monitor crime on our streets and in our homes and rural areas. You failed to provide connectivity that will give our children online schooling. You failed to provide connectivity in police stations such that we're able to remotely report cases and the police are able to respond to cases immediately. If not for the failures of the telecommunications department, perhaps that spectacle of the White House would not even have happened. Minister, we had even forgotten about you and your department, if not for that meeting. Let alone why we are even doing this digital inclusion and migration in the first place. But let's begin here. Blessed memory, Minister Mutsipe Katsiburi was a visionary who announced in 2007 digital migration. And she started all sorts of ICT revolutionary stuff for this nation. White papers that will give us digital inclusion. And the cabinet approved that. And the first digital signal was switched on in November 2007. Minister, it has been downhill from there. And unfortunately, you have joined the gang of the downhill. Because of the inability of this government, we have failed to meet every single deadline for digital inclusion, digital migration, to ensure that a rural child in South Africa can connect to the internet, can learn online, and can access research on internet. I can go to town to list all the failed deadlines from 2011, 2013, 2015, go and do your research, 2021. The latest deadline that you had set yourself, you were sitting there, was 31 March 2025, which came and went. No digital migration. Let's talk about SA Connect. Since 2015, you are going to connect 4,000 schools. We're sitting here with less than 599 schools that have been connected. It's a disgrace. Your predecessors that I'm going to name, that have all come and gone, sitting there. The former Minister Nyanda, 2009, 2011, former Minister Padeyachi, former Minister Pule, former Minister Karim, former Minister Kwele, former Minister Mutambi, former Minister Dlodlo, former Minister Kubai Ngubani, former Minister Stella Ndabeni, Nomvula Mkonyane, Ntshabeni, Ngungubele, and now here you are, 2024, and hopefully to 2025. Because we can't afford another disaster like this. This department has been a disastrous waste of money. We actually get migraines thinking about the billions that have been spent to connect schools, to connect our rural areas over the past 20 years, with all of these ministers that I have counted. Over 10 billion rand spent. USAF has billions of rands to connect rural schools, to connect rural areas, to connect hospitals. Our questions now remain, who is actually benefiting from this disaster? Who is now going to benefit from this current disaster that you have created for us through this illegal and unlawful Regulation 17.8? Let's bring it now to SITA, where there's a new fraternity now with SITA. This is the entity that the White House was talking about. SITA was supposed to have provided ICT technology to the government in its entirety. Since 1999, when it was formed, SITA has managed to achieve nothing. Claims of corruption leveled against it, leadership instability, governance failures, and the list goes on, to an extent where you yourself, Minister, you've called on the Public Service Commission to launch a comprehensive investigation into this agency. That today, you are sitting here using, maliciously so, its regulations illegally so, to try and advance an agenda that goes against our constitutional transformative agenda of this nation, even our national development plan itself. Now, when we watch that ill-prepared...
Conclusion, Honorable
Not yet, Minister. We've been waiting. Sorry, Minister, waiting. We've been waiting for this. I will not be long, but I need an opportunity to express this. It's of national interest. We waited for everybody who was late to arrive here, so may we kindly have this opportunity to express. It's our one opportunity. Our constituencies are listening to what we are saying.
Thanks, Honorable
Those
Member.
ill-prepared GNU delegation that was at the White House describing the failures. Minister, they were describing the failures of SETA. They were describing your failures as a Minister of Communications and Digital Technologies. They were describing the failures of Sentech, the failures of USASA, the failures of broadband infraco, USAF, and all that money that has been spent. Over 6,000 employees under your watch, employed to provide what you want Starlink to come and do for you. Frankly, we think that meeting, that whole fiasco, Minister, was a vote of no confidence on you. Your party leader sitting there, John Steenhuisen, the president, and all the other ministers and their billionaire friends have actually issued a vote of no confidence on you. And hence they are begging Starlink to come and do your job, and the 6,000 people that this government is paying on a monthly basis to do this very work. And what is your response to all of this, Minister? Hardly 48 hours after the fact, you truly are affirming what they are saying, that you are out of your depth, and without due process and lack of judgment call, you went and issued an unlawful, unconstitutional gazette. So here we are today. An SMK party, through this committee, we're here to provide oversight. Over the past 30 years, oversight was just reduced to ineffectiveness, pushing partisan agendas. That time is over. We are not going to sit and overlook illegal acts, incompetence, and corruption. We understand what this means, what BBBE means, what the Constitution means when they talk about transformation, what the ICASA Act means, what the SETA Section 23 means. We understand all of this. It means a job opportunity for a township and rural child somewhere. Minister, the gravity of that gazette that you so casually signed, it's a denial of a constitutional right of a historically disadvantaged group to own the economy, to participate in the ICT sector, and to own land in this country. Those of us who have single citizenship and single passport, and many others who vote for us, they want an opportunity to play in the ICT sector. They are tired of equity equivalent handouts. They are tired of multinationals that are going to come in here and give them crumbs and train them without meaningful, sustainable ownership, control, and transformation. Our letter as MK Party was very clear. There is no multinational that will evade the BBBE Act of ownership, control, and management, the 30% as provided by the Act. As I draw to close now, Minister, it's a pity that we can't directly put a motion of no confidence on you as MPs and as a party, because you have delegated authority, you are appointed by the president. But in the light of that, these are my 4 questions to you. Why should we keep you as a minister of DCDT? when are you reversing this unlawful gazette? Who pressured you to do this? You are under oath. Who pressured you? Who instructed you to do this? Because you seem like an intelligent man. Maybe in the words of Rupert, you seem like a changed man. Who is pressuring you to do this? Tell us who in your department, the departments that you oversee, advised you to do this gazette, because we want to know them. Because those are the incompetent people that after we release you, we need to go after them as well. Finally, again, Mr. Minister, when can we expect your resignation letter? I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Honorable Makubela. Honorable members, I want to plead with you. It's 11:49. Ne?
Chair. My apologies to interrupt you. I missed the second question on the 4 concluding questions that the honorable member asked. So I would really, and I'm not being distracted.
Number one was?
Number 1 was, why should we keep you? So I missed the second one.
Honorable Makubela. Honorable Makubela, could you repeat your second question?
You see now, I'm not sure if I can do it with the same passion. So, but the second one was, when are you reversing the unlawful gazette? You got the other ones? Perfect, thank you. Are you
Members, please, it's 10 to 12. And unfortunately, we do have plenary at 2 o'clock. I know that we all want to speak on this matter, but I'm appealing. Let's try and manage time because the minister will still have to respond, and I know you will still want to follow up. SABC, Sentech are sitting here, so please, can I ask that we manage ourselves? I don't want to stop anybody. Lest I be called a changed woman. Honorable Shongwe.
Thank you, Chair. Ngibingelele futhi. Chair, I'm covered kakhulu by our members wethu la ekhaya. But Chair, as we laugh la phakathi, enhlizweni yami kubuhlungu kakhulu. This is a week eseremindwe ukuthi South Africa ithengisiwe. And okubuhlungu sikhunjuzwa ke manje ukuthi ke na futhi siyaboniswa ke manje ukuthi iSouth Africa izodayiswa sibhekile singezukusho lutho futhi. Che ngibuza ukuthi uminister nje behleli lapha insizwa yakithi uthini ngesibongo sakhe? Uthini ngomndeni wakhe? Uyacabangela ukuthi kusasa this will go in the history ukuthi ungomunye wabadayisi and udayisa ngesilungu, udayisa in a very urban way other than before. Ngaleya nkathi abantu besadayisa ubefaka itayere eshiswa. Che kubuhlungu ukuthi sibukele iSouth Africa ihleli no Trump edelela umongameli wezwe who is supposed to be representing us, but ehluleke. Chair, I'm sorry, I'm not going to sugarcoat this one. And I plead with you, Chair, ukuthi ngathi ungasinika isikhathi. Because this is not about the policy or this gazette kuphela. This in total is ukuthathwa kwezwe. Because this Starlink issue has a lot in it. It has cyber security enkulu kabi la ekuthenini uthathwe izwe lethu futhi lishiqilelwe phansi. Isimilo Chair kuminister yasibuza ukuthi uvuma kanjani ukuthi kuxoxwe phambi kwakhe ukuthi akususwe i30% efike kanzima Chair. Yabona kuze Chair kufike ku30%, it was when abantu abamnyama in business bengakhona ukufinyelela bathola amathuba. They will be told that their companies are not well experienced, they don't have those services, they don't qualify for certain grades. Kwaphuma isinqumo under President Zuma, as it clear in the Constitution, these laws are made to develop umuntu omnyama, nokuthi skill sisale la South Africa, baphinde bawuthola umsebenzi as business people. Sifika kanjani ukuthi insizwa yakithi emnyama ihlale nabanye ivuma ukuthi cha umuntu omnyama akanganikwa lento akungena ikhampani yangaphandle ingavunyelwa ivumelwe ukuthi ingalandeli imigomo ye-GNU yelokhunja yase South Africa but ilandele ye-GNU. Chair, in the midst of my question Honorable Colin Makubela comes the act engiyiboniswa Honorable Usobulana ezothi ubuza a question ukuthi i-leader yabo i-leader yabo, Chair, in the Oval Office, are there deals cut behind the scene? And we are sitting here, Chair, we are calling ourselves, or you are calling yourselves into a GNU. Where is the GNU lapho? Because we're supposed to be collectively deciding this thing, not as GNU. You are one in this thing. Chair, it cannot be umkhonto wesizwe usaphila.
All right, so there you hear a very heated session. The Portfolio Committee on Communications and Digital Technologies well underway. So Malatsi being asked questions now by MPs from the Umkhonto Wesizwe Party about those directives in the ICT space to do with BEE laws. We'll continue listening in to that, of course, for you throughout the course of the rest of the day to get you a sense of how things unfold.